Hello, my name is Travis Bearman. I'm 37 years old. I live in Southeast Texas. I'm a land surveyor by trade. I'm happily married with 4 children. This is my NDE story. In October of 2018, I was on drugs in a bad way, taking anything and everything that I could. And I would sit in my garage and get high. And on one particular day, I must have taken too much, because after I dosed myself, I heard a loud horn go off in my head, and then I blacked out. When I woke up, things were different for me. My mind was acting in a way I couldn't explain. I would be of a thought or with a question in my mind, and the answer to my question would pop into my head, replacing the question. And I wondered to myself, what is this? And my mind answered my question by turning a light bulb on that I could see in my mind. And the first thing that came to mind was the word enlightenment. Somehow I knew it was true, and I sat and pondered on life and many other things for the next few days. I began to astral travel in my mind, going deep into space, across town, going anywhere and everywhere in my mind I could see perfectly clear. Now, somehow I got onto the topic of religion, and I was asking questions about religion to myself, and the answers that I were getting were things like, religion is a separation of God. I know that sounds funny, but if you think about it, if there's a little bit of truth in every religion, if God is truth, then there's truth in every religion, then that does make sense that we've divided God into our religions. And so something didn't set well with me, and I didn't ask any more questions in regards to religion. I just moved forward. But when I moved forward, I was telling myself things like, oh, well, you don't need salvation, you don't need Jesus, you don't need religion, you don't need church, you don't need these things. You just need to be a good person. And so what I ended up doing accidentally was kicking Jesus out of my heart. I kicked him out of my heart verbally by saying 3 times out loud that there is no need for a savior because religion was a hoax. And so that night I went to bed and started having nightmares, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would be dripping with sweat. And each night I was having a reoccurring dream about witches and just horrible things. And finally I woke up one night, I think it was the 3rd or 4th night, and I could see in the corner of my room a black entity in the top right corner of my room, and it was hanging there in the corner of the wall with its arms and legs back behind itself, kind of perched in the corner, showing its teeth towards me. And I knew that it was a demon. I knew for certain it was a demon, and it terrified the life out of me. The next night came, and I could see more than one. I could see a handful of them. And then the next night came, and I could see even more, and the next night even more, and so on, until I got to a point to where it was as if my entire house was full of these things that I could see. And I became so frightened that I began wetting the bed at night. That's how terrified I was, staying up all night underneath my sheets because I couldn't fall asleep because I was that terrified. And the whole time I'm still using. So finally one night comes, and I've had all I could take, and I felt the will to live just leave my body, and it felt as though I was having a heart attack. And somehow I just absolutely knew that I was about to die. I just felt it coming. And I think when you feel death coming, you know, just like same as you know you're alive, you know when you're dead or when you're dying. It's just that aware. You become that aware to the situation, and all of your senses are heightened. And so I'm laying in bed, and I'm certain that I'm about to have a heart attack and die. And so, for fear of my wife waking up the next morning and finding my body next to her in bed, I decided that I would roll out of bed, and that I would try to make it across the room somewhere, you know. And I rolled out of bed, hit the floor, was on my hands and knees, and began crawling to the foot of my bed. Now at this time, I'm seeing 100 demons. They're all above me in my room, and there's a portal that's opening up above my bed. And in the portal, I'm looking up into it, and I can see demons just crawling tooth and nail over each other, trying to come through the portal to get to me in my bedroom. And there was already a bunch of them in my bedroom, but they were all like stuck to the walls and not like moving. They were just like perched, just waiting. And I was on my hands and knees at the foot of my bed, and I felt it come. And it was like, this is my last breath. And I drew it in, and then time stood still. Everything just completely stopped. And the walls in front of me became translucent, and I could see right through the walls. I could see through my entire house. And I looked and I saw my children in bed, and I thought to myself, there's no way that I can leave my kids in this situation. And I cried out to God. I cried out to Jesus without saying it out loud. In my heart cried out, Lord, save me. And in that moment, that very same moment, Jesus appeared behind me, and I felt his presence, and I knew it was him, as though you know your best friend or your mother or your father or your brother or your sister. It's just a known feeling when you're around him. He's very familiar. Now I'm still on my hands and knees, and he has a light protruding from him. He wasn't in the flesh, so there was no physical form of him there that I could touch physically, but the spirit of him was there, and it was in the image of his flesh, and light was coming through him, and I assume that that's the Holy Spirit, the light of the Holy Spirit that flows through him, and that light shined on me. And when it did, every thought of fear, every memory of pain, it all fled my body. I couldn't remember anything leading up to that moment as far as like my fear of the demons and everything. And in that same moment, as the light spread through the room and covered me, when it reached the demons, they fled. They took off in every direction. They fled. And it took them just a split second to go from like where I could see them to they were gone at a distance further than I could see. And I was seeing through the walls, so I saw them like leave my house and like shoot across town, and like it was wild. And so there I am on my hands and knees in the presence of the Lord, and he places his right hand on my shoulder, and he says to me, without speaking out loud, he says, "Fear not, my son, and rise, for I am with you now, as I've always been and always will be." And I didn't have the strength to get up onto my feet just yet. And he told it to me again, and then one more time he said it. And on the third time he said it, it was almost as if like I still didn't have the strength to stand up, but my body did. It was almost as if his words were like some kind of commandment to my body, and my body obeyed what his direction was to my body. He told my body to stand up, and my body stood up. I don't feel like it was me that stood myself up. And I turned around and I looked at him from head to toe, and he said, "Follow me." At which point he took me to heaven above. And when we got up there, it was weird because I knew that my body was still in my bedroom, but I could feel my spirit, like my essence of myself, not in my body. It was completely out of the body experience. And I was walking behind him up above in heaven. And what it looked like where he had taken me was, it was as if we had entered in the southeast corner and we were traveling northwesternly. And off in the distance was a huge tree, just the most largest tree that you've ever seen. And underneath the tree was a river that flowed, but it wasn't water. It was liquidy, but it wasn't water. It was like, if I had to describe it, the only way I could describe it would be like liquid diamonds. Imagine if you liquefied diamonds. That's what it looked like. It was full of light and sparkle, and it was just beautiful. And as I'm walking, I begin seeing orbs. Orbs are moving around and going from place to place, going through one another. And then finally one of them went through me. And when it did, I had a flash of that soul, their life. I had a flash of their entire life, everything that they wanted me to see of themselves. Because that's what it was. It was a soul. I didn't know that until afterwards. But the soul passed through me, and when it did, I collected all of the knowing from that soul's life. And it was as if I had spent my entire life getting to know somebody and knowing all the details about them. And it brought joy to my heart, and it made me feel wonderful. And then I look around and I realize that's what everybody there is doing. All these orbs are passing through each other. They're collecting each other's essence and adding to the essence of heaven above. And from what I could tell on the land, it was like one-on-one encounters, and I also saw entities in the form of flesh, but not of skin. They were like angelic form, but they were see-through, transparent. And in the water, it was as if everybody in the water could feel everybody in the water. So if you wanted to go into the water or the liquid diamonds, then when you enter into it, you feel the accumulation of everybody who's in the water. So the whole experience of joy through that individual's life, and now all those individuals whose lives were lived, and they're in the water. And so you're feeling all of their joy at once, and it's completely overwhelming. Yeah, so I was up there for about, I would say, a good 15 to 20 minutes. And from there, he returned me to my body and took me to another place momentarily after that. And this place, it wasn't hell. I think it was a place of judgment. I think it's where we go before we go to hell. And what occurred was, it felt as though I was standing in an empty room with endless direction, with an endless distance in all directions. And in this room, I could hear people talking about me, whispering, saying bad things about me. I became uncomfortable and became quite paranoid. Yeah, I was like stuck. I couldn't get anywhere. I couldn't move. And as much effort as I put into running in a direction, it was as if I hadn't moved an inch. And I thought to myself, what is this? And the word judgment came. And in that moment, I had a life review. And in a single second, my entire life review happened. And I relived my entire life from the first breath to the last breath. And that goes for every emotion, every thought, every feeling that I ever had. I relived it all. And when I came out the inside of that, I was standing there and I knew all of my deeds. I could remember every word I'd ever said. I could remember every deed that I'd ever done, good and bad. And I looked up, and when I looked up, I saw my friends and my family standing before me, in front of me, and above them was their friends and their family members, and above them was their friends and their family members, and so on and so forth, until it went all the way to the top of this room that I was in, to where it was just so far away that it was just out of sight. There's that many people. I knew that just as I had lived my life review, that everyone that was standing there, they had all watched it as well, because there were some people there that weren't so happy with me. Things that I had said behind their back, things that I had done without telling them, lies that I told, things like that. They all were known now to all of the people that I hid them from my entire life. My life review occurred again. It happened a second time, and the second time it happened, it occurred for me as though I was in their body, experiencing the actions that I did towards them, but in their point of view, and feeling their emotions and their pain and everything that I caused them to feel. And so I felt all the joy that I caused, and I felt all the pain that I caused. And I came out the backside of that and I opened my eyes, and everybody was there. They were not happy. And in that moment, I burst into flames and I began to burn. And I was screaming out loud because of the pain and the agony. And everybody slowly but surely covered their ears, covered their eyes, and turned around, turned their back towards me, as if they couldn't stand the sight of watching my body burn. And I'm crying out to them for help, and no one's helping me. And in this moment, it feels like eternity. It feels like I thought I was in hell. I thought that I must have died and gone to hell because that's what it must have felt like. I was burning and burning and burning and in agony, no way through it. And after what seemed like eternity, I finally came to the notion that what I needed to do was seek forgiveness for what I had done in my life. And so I began one by one going through the list of deeds that I had done to each of the people that were standing in front of me. And I began asking for forgiveness for each of the things that I'd done, every single thing that I'd ever done. And slowly but surely, as I was earning their forgiveness, the flames in my body were going out until the very last flame went out. At which point, I rubbed my hands across my whole body, and I was just disgusted with the feeling of my own self. And so I was rubbing myself off from myself, and then I began hearing gasps for air. My eyes were closed, and I began hearing things like, "Oh my God, look at him! He's so beautiful! Oh my God, look at how tall he is!" Things like that. And I opened my eyes, and much to my surprise, I was not this melted version of myself that I anticipated. I was an angel standing there before them, and I had big wings, wings that went over my head. They could close over my head like that, and they could close around my feet as well and totally encapsulate my body. That's how big these wings are. They go all the way to the ground without touching the ground, and they're up above your head. And I was standing there as an angel now before them, and the next thing I know, I'm standing in a long line with a bunch of people, and I hear off in the distance what sounded like God's voice calling out names. And I could see the gates of heaven at the very front of the line, and I'm at the very back of the line. And as I'm making my way forward and I'm noticing what's occurring, is that God is speaking the child's name, whoever his child is. It could be a grown up or an older person. It doesn't have to be a child, but it's God's child. Call out the child's name, and when he would call out the name of the child would walk forward and the gates of heaven would open up. And then there was an angel sitting there with a book, and he would write the child's name in the book. And then the child would enter through the gates, and the gates would close. And then the next child's name would be spoken, and that child would walk forward. The angel would write its name in the book, and the gates would open. That one child would walk through, and the gates would close. And that occurred until I got all the way up to the front of the line, and got to enter myself. Ended up making my way through, and was encountered by family members, and yeah, it was just incredible. Shortly after that, I returned back to my body, and for the next 2 years, I was with the ability to see and talk to Jesus. He would show up from time to time just in my mind. I could just see him with my mind's eye, and he would just embrace me, and just, I think it was his way of letting me know that he's still here with me, even though I can't see him like I could that night. He's still with me, and I'll never forget the words that he said. Fear not, and rise, for I'm with you now as I've always been and always will be. And anytime I'm feeling down and out, I think back to those words, and it cheers me up, just knowing that he's still here with me. I could go on for days and days about my experience with Jesus. We had a lot of good times together. I suppose that would be the moral of the story, is that no matter where we go, Jesus is with us. So, what am I trying to say? I guess that's all. I appreciate everybody listening to my NDE, and I just hope that everybody out there who has gone through an NDE knows that you're not alone. There are those of us out here who have gone through it as well, so you don't have to be alone in it. There's a whole community of people who are willing to embrace you and love you for how you are and who you are, when I understand that it's hard for people to accept the NDE that we've gone through. I know for me particularly, my family had a hard time accepting it, my friends as well. So if anyone out there is looking for someone to talk to about their NDE, or if you have any questions about mine, please feel free to contact me. My contact information can be found below. All right. God bless you. Thank you.